welcome to Terrace Stamping and Treat. Today we're going to be making a selection of Aperture cards, and for these I thought I'd use a kit from a magazine. Now you guys know that I love the magazines, and particularly the kits that come with them, because I just think you get so much for your money. I do actually create for some magazines. This isn't one of them. I just thought that we'd make some cards with this kit because, like I say, they're such good value. So you obviously get the magazine, but the things that you get free with the magazine in this issue, this gorgeous Frida Kahlo stamp collection, and it's a huge stamp collection. You can see it's the size of the magazine. And then you get this smaller one as well, which has sentiment stamps on it. So you've got birthday wishes, you are unique, you're beautiful, capable and worthy, do what you love, friendship isn't a big thing, it's a million little things and one of a kind. And the thing I like about it as well is it kind of has something for everyone. If you don't want to make something with Frida Kahlo on it, it's got really beautiful florals, it's got lovely frames, it's got all sorts of beautiful things on there. And you can see this on the front uses this one here, but then you've also got this lovely one here which uses just the solid floral stamps to make that lovely pattern. So you can really get lots of different looks from it. So I'm just going to kind of open a few pages at random so that you can kind of see. That's the one from the front look, and this person's been using all the solid stamps on there to get different looks. And this isn't one of the magazine box kits that I usually show. So this magazine has all sorts of different crafty ideas, not just using the kit, but there are also plenty of ideas that do use the kit. You can see this one's just got lots of those florals on. So I love to have a flick through and get some ideas. So for example, to me this brush show masterclass is really interesting because I love the effect and I've never used this technique, so that's something that I'll definitely have a closer look at. So let's move on to the cards. So for my first card I'm going to use this wreath stamp, and I'm just going to prep that up because all these stamps are new. So you've probably seen me do this lots of times if you have seen a lot of my videos, but in case you've not seen any before, I like to prep new stamps with some Versamark ink before I put the black on, because it helps the black kind of like stick to a new stamp. Let's just test that on some scrap paper. Looks to be stamping nicely, so then I can go ahead and use it on my project. So I'm going to be stamping off the side of this a bit, so I'm going to pop that bit of scrap paper underneath just to protect my mat. And I want to stamp this 3 times on the front of my card. I'm going to make sure it goes off the edge a little bit. I think that adds a bit more interest. Now I did the top and the bottom one first so that I can make sure that this one sits nicely between them. I didn't want to have like no space left for this one or too much space so it looked a bit strange at the bottom. So then we're making Aperture cards today. So I want to use this die, which is just from a generic layering die set. It's an old one, and I'm just going to centre that in the middle of each of these. So I'm going to cut a hole out of each of those. So those are going to be our apertures for this card. So then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to trace through the apertures with a pencil, just so that I can see, because I want to do some stamping through here. I'm just doing it lightly so that I can rub it out afterwards, so then I can see what I've got to play with. So I think that birthday wishes is just going to sit in there really nicely. So I'm just going to prep this stamp in the same way I did my other one. So then I can add some of the smaller flowers from the set to kind of decorate the circles. So you can see what that looks like now when I close that. And now I can just use my eraser just to erase those circles that we had inside. So at this point I'm just going to bring in this because I just want to show you why I've chosen my colour palette today. And for me, when I think of like Frida Kahlo stuff, I think of all these like really bright colours mixed back with black. So today I'm going to use on a couple of my cards this Peruvian market pattern paper from Catherine Pooler, and particularly this design here that has the black base with all the colours on it. So the reason I want to show you that now is because I've chosen my colours that I'm going to use to match back to that. So they're all Altenew markers, and I'll really quickly take you through the names because I know some of you like to know that kind of thing. So I've got Grassfield and Firefly as the greens. When I use the skin colours later, I'll be using Sand Dunes, Blush and Rouge. I'm not going to use those obviously on this one. The kind of pinks and reds I've got are Crimson, Coral Bliss and Heartbeat. Then I've got this tealy colour which is called Aqualicious. Then I've got Autumn Blaze Orange, and I've got Warm Sunshine and Citrus Burst as my yellows. And then I'm going to use this black one from Stampin' Up as well. That's the dark black. So I'm just going to go ahead and colour my flowers. And I think you can see on each of my circles I've got this little bit here where the die doesn't quite go in the same direction as the stamp. So I'm just going to trim that down with my scissors so that it's nice and neat with the inside of that stamp circle. And then the other thing I'm going to do is just run the black pen just around the edges of there. So now that the inside's done, we can close that and we can see how it looks through the card. And I intentionally did the inside of the card before the outside, so that now while I'm building up the colour on the outside, I can see what it's looking like with the bit in the middle as well. Then I really like that, and you could leave it like that, but I want to add a bit more drama, so I'm going to just outline everything in black. So that's the card now that I've done the outlining, and I really love the impact that that black outlining is giving it. Okay, so then for this next card, I've actually got two 5x7 black card blanks, and you'll see why we need two as we go through, because we're going to do a card with one side that folds in under the other side like that. So I'm going to start by looking at the front of the card. So I've got this paper, which is the one I showed you earlier from the Catherine Paula pack. But it's a 6x6 paper. So I have cut it down to 5 3/4 by 4 3/4, and then 1 by 4 3/4. Because it's a nice like geometric pattern, I can pop that in underneath and no one will ever tell that it's not one piece of paper. So I'm going to glue those on now. And then I want to create our aperture in the card front. So I've got this, which is one of these layering dies, and that's from Essential Floral Reflection dies from Spellbinders. I'll link those below. It's a really nice set of dies to have. It's just unusual shapes that you don't normally find. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use that to cut an aperture in the front of this card length. So I'm going to be cutting through the card and the paper. So now I've got this aperture, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to glue these cards together. So I'm going to glue in here. And before any of the glue dries, you just want to make sure that it opens and closes nicely. So then I'm going to heat emboss this large kind of Frida Kahlo face with a butterfly onto some white cardstock. And I'm going to use this Wow Primary Ebony Super Fine Embossing Powder, which is really nice fine one. And you can see that especially on an image like this, it's really important to have a fine embossing powder. You can see it's even picked up these tiny lines, and the definition's really nice. Whereas if you use an embossing powder that's got kind of coarser granules, then you're just not going to get that definition. So let's heat that up. So you can see that's really nice and glossy, has a really nice definition to it. So I'm going to colour that and cut it out. And there's that image coloured. You can see that it has a really nice contrast with the glossy embossing powder. I've done some flowers to go with it as well. Put those to the side for a second. So then I've got a 4 3/4 by 6 3/4 piece of white cardstock. Just the £80 Nina Solar white. And I'm going to pop that in the middle of here. So that'll be where we'll write our message. And then that'll go over there. And that'll go over like that. So I want that Frida Kahlo image to go inside there. So I'm going to glue that on there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to position it under here where I want it to, and then kind of press it down with the card front in place so that I kind of know that it's going to be in the right place. So then I'm going to use that happy birthday sentiment again, and I'm going to emboss it with white embossing powder onto black cardstock. I'm using the Wow embossing powders today. I normally use the Ultimate ones just because I got sent them for a commission that I'm going to do for a magazine. So I'm just kind of testing out how they work. But actually they're really, really nice. The quality is really good on them, and they're really nice fine embossing powder. And the other thing that I personally like in a white embossing powder is that it's quite a bright white, and that it really is. I think I'm going to cut around this sentiment with my scissors. So I'm going to have birthday wishes on the outside, and then I think I'm going to put this "You are beautiful, capable and worthy" on the inside. And I'm going to use my stamp wheel just to make sure that that goes in the right place, because I don't want to mess that up. So I'm going to ink that with my Versamark. And that will go like that, so that will be what you open up onto, and this will be our front. So let's just arrange these bits on the front. I think that although I created all of these flowers, so I don't think I'm going to use this flower, I'm just going to use those 3. So then I'm going to use some foam pads just to pop these bits up. So we've got this card, and it opens up, and then it opens up again for your message. So then for my next card, I've just got a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch card blank. I'm going to pop that in my stamp wheel, and then I'm also just going to use this piece of tape just to kind of keep it shut so that that front stays in the same place too. And then I'm just going to arrange some of these flowers over the front of the card. There's the pattern heat embossed, and you can see I've got some speckles of embossing powder around there. And I think that that is because when I was placing the stamps for the second lot, I think I should have cleaned them better, because I think that this is from where I placed them down and they've moved a little. So in normal circumstances I would create this again, because I don't normally like that spotty look around the flowers, but actually I kind of feel like it's adding a kind of a bit of a distressed, slightly vintagey feel to it, so I'm going to go with that today. So then for the aperture on this one, I'm going to use this layering rectangle. It's a stitched rectangle. This is an old one. I think most of us have some sort of layering shapes in our stash, like could be an oval, could be really any shape that fits around your sentiment. So if you've not got rectangles in your stash, have a look and see what you do have. Then we've got our aperture, and I'm going to draw through the aperture lightly with my pencil, and then I'm going to use that box to place my sentiment in. So I'm going to use the birthday wishes again. I'm going to use the black embossing powder again. So I've erased those lines. We've just got the birthday wishes inside. So now I'm just going to colour that in. So that's that card now that the colouring's done. So then for my next card, I'm going to do more apertures, but this time I'm going to do it on a card front. So I've got an A6 black card blank, so that is 5 7/8 by 4 1/8 inches, and I've got the same size piece of black cardstock. So I'm going to use that to create some apertures. And the way that I find it easiest to make sure that I've got them centered is to do the center one first and then work out to the sides. So then I've cut a strip of this paper, same one we used for the other card, and I want to position that behind where these apertures are. So that's fine just there. You'll see I've got two bits that match up. I'm doing the same matching thing. The paper's actually wide enough to fit across, but I'm just using a couple of kind of scrappish pieces. And then I want to add a sentiment to the front of here. So I'm going to heat emboss that with the white embossing powder. I'm going to do the birthday wishes again. So now I'm going to make this into a shaker card. So I'm going to pop some tape around these apertures. The tape's a little bit wide for the side panels, so I'm going to use the tape there just to keep it in place, and then I'll use a bit of glue down here, because glue's a little bit slidey for acetate on its own. I like it to stick straight away, but if I use the glue with the tape, then it will stick straight away. So then put that on there. You can use bought acetate, you can use bits of plastic packaging, whatever works for you. And then I'm going to grab some foam strips and I'm going to pop them around the apertures as well. And so then I'm going to kind of measure where I need to cut on these, because it's really important that we get a nice tight seal between the parts of the foam tape, because otherwise all our sequin's going to fall out. So then I'm going to put a couple of bits towards the top and the bottom, and these are just to add stability. These don't need to be like pressed up against each other. So I'm turning this over. I'm going to take a look where I want these sequins to go. So these sequins are Yukon sequin mix from Catherine Paula. I'm just checking that to make sure that they're going to be in the right place, because I don't want them sticking to my foam. That's going to be fine, so let's take the backing off my foam. So then they shake about nicely inside there. And then I've got some of these flowers that I just created by black heat embossing some of the flowers from the stamp set. I think I'm going to put those on like that. And I'm just going to add on a couple of these sequins to the front as well. So then there's that card finished. So then for my final card, I have got a 5-inch square card blank. And I'm just kind of trying to eyeball putting this in the centre of my stamp wheel. And I can help myself out with that. So for example, here I've got a mark on my stamp wheel, and probably might not be that easy to see on camera, but there's a mark here and a mark there that are near enough right at the top and the bottom of my card. I can see the one here is slightly on my card and the one there is slightly off, so I just need to move it over a teeny tiny bit, and then I can just try again, and that looks just about right now, I think. So as I said in my last video, I will eventually get a grid or something for the bottom, but I've actually ordered some positioners that go with this, so I want to try them out first before I put the grid down. So I want to keep my card closed so that it doesn't catch on the platform. So I'm just putting a couple of pieces of really old sticky tape so I know it's not going to rip my card there to keep that in place. And I want to create a floral wreath on the outside. So I'm going to position the stem. I'm going to ink that up with my alternate jet blanket. And my heart is at the bottom. So then I'm just kind of like looking at where I want this to go next. And I think I'm going to go to the side, so I'm going to turn it 45 degrees, so it means that my heart will go towards this side this time. And this time the heart needs to go towards the top, and finally it needs to point out towards this side. So then I'm going to want to fill in some of these gaps. So I think I'm going to start off with this smaller flower, and then after I've stamped it, I'm going to see if I want to fill in any more gaps with the other small bits. So I think maybe I'll use that one as well. So I'm going to turn this 90 degrees and pick up that one, and then I can use those both at once. And then I've done all of these, so I can just carry on with the leaf then. And then I think I might use that same leaf again in this direction. So confession time, I made this, and then as soon as I went to stamp that, you can see where I lined it up, but it was quite late here and I clearly wasn't concentrating properly, so I put it in the wrong hole. I didn't have the heart facing directly down, which I should have, and it went over like that. You can see this is the first one we stamped together. I actually changed up this flower stamp for the one that I'm going to go with, so you can see the differences there. So I'm going to colour this in. I'm using the same colours all the way through. Then now that that's coloured, I'm going to cut an aperture in the middle. So I'm going to force my scissors through there and start cutting round. I like to make a bit of a hole before I start getting close to the flowers, and that makes it easier to cut. And then I'm just going to kind of cut loosely round. I'm going to leave a little white border as well. The other thing you notice, and this will probably depend on what hand you cut with, your scissors, but I find it easier for this to have my hand underneath the card. It just seems to work a bit better for me, but again, it depends what kind of scissors you've got, what hand you use, to what you find easiest. Okay, so I've got this aperture now, and I'm just going to kind of loosely draw around there. And then I want to put my birthday wishes sentiment in it. And I've used the same sentiment throughout this because for me that's the one that I'm going to use the most. But a lot of them are kind of like similar sizes, so you could probably use a few of them for these cards. So I've got that stamped in there, and that shows through the front. So then I'll rub out those marks. So I'm going to take these Green Meadows enamel darts. I'm going to use this middle colour here. And because I've got this repeat pattern, I want to follow that repeat pattern with my enamel dots. So I'm going to put them in the same place all the way around. So there's my final card finished. So then I'm going to bring all of my cards in. So there are all of today's cards. I really hope you've enjoyed the video and that you've got some different ideas for using apertures on your cards. Let me know which is your favourite in the comments below. I really hope that you enjoyed today's video. If you did, I'd really appreciate you clicking like below. You can also press subscribe if you'd like to see future videos. If you press the bell button and select all, then YouTube will also notify you when I've got new videos available. All of the products that I've used for today's cards are listed in the description below, and there's also a link there to my blog which has a picture supply list if that helps you find what you're looking for. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope to see you again soon.